Hello, my name is Sarah Atchison, and this is for Managerial Economics Deliverable Number 2. This is our introduction, and in the overview we are going to be evaluating the effects that the following scenarios would have on the supply and demand of oil for oil company X. We will talk about the supply and demand of economic conditions. We will look at the following scenarios, and then at the end we will discuss a recommendation and a summary of what the company should do moving forward. So some common terms that you will need to be familiar with and understand throughout this presentation to follow along with some of the graphs and curves will be demand. That is simply the consumer's desire to purchase a good or service and how much of it they will want. Therefore, the law of demand is when consumers are demanding more of a good because its price is lower, it's holding prices of other goods at a constant. The tastes and other factors have influenced their desire to purchase that specific good or the quantity at which they wish to consume. Determinants of demand are things that simply determine or affect the amount of a demand of a certain good or service. Some of these determinants include taste, preference, number of buys, the price of substitutes or complementary goods, income, and expectations. Supply is simply the amount of a certain good or service that is available to consumers. So the law of supply is the amount of goods or services that a producer produces and provides to the market. Determinants of supply are things that determine the amount of supply needed. These determinants include resource prices, process technology, taxes, subsidies, prices of substitutes and complementary goods, the number of sellers, and the expectations. The final piece is, of course, the market, which is where we have buyers and sellers coming together to exchange said good or services. Equilibrium itself is just a point where the participant does not want to change their behavior. The equilibrium point on our graphs that will be used throughout the presentation are where those supply and demand curves will intersect. Equilibrium price and quantity are based on that intersection, and that is how we will find our price and quantity. In scenario 1, we are looking at the restriction of drilling in the U.S. to preserve protected areas due to regulations that have been passed. With limitations on drilling, there will be a decrease in supply of oil. This decrease in supply will cause the supply curve to shift to the left, representing an increase in the equilibrium price and a decrease to the equilibrium quantity. In scenario number 2, we are looking at the U.S. having a large increase in population and birth rate. So if there are more people in the country, then the demand for oil will definitely increase. This increase will cause the demand curve to shift to the right, so our equilibrium price and our equilibrium quantity will both increase. In scenario number 3, we are looking at a recession. When a recession occurs, people aren't working, so the need for oil decreases as people don't have jobs to go to or extra money to spend, which should eliminate their senseless driving or going to do extra activities because they don't have the money to spend. So the demand for oil will decrease, which would also decrease the price. So the equilibrium price is decreasing, the equilibrium quantity is decreasing, and the demand curve itself shifts to the left. In scenario number 4, there are an increase in the availability of affordable and alternative energy sources. So essentially there are substitutes that are available to consumers. The domestic producers do not need to produce as much supply of the original products. The supply will essentially decrease, causing the supply curve to shift to the left. Therefore, our equilibrium price will increase and our equilibrium quantity will decrease. In conclusion, for our recommendation, just summarizing, we discussed the supply and demand of certain scenarios. And in that scenario number 1, with regulations restricting our drilling, it would cause a decrease in supply, shifting our curve to the left, increasing our price, decreasing our quantity. In scenario number 2, we looked at increases in population, which would increase our demand, which moves our curve to the right, increasing our price, decreasing our quantity. In scenario number 3, we looked at a recession, which of course decreases our demand, moving our curve to the left, decreasing our price, and decreasing our quantity. In the final scenario, we looked at what would happen if there was an increase in available substitutes or alternative sources, and that would decrease our original supply, making our curve shift to the left and increasing our price while decreasing our quantity. So after looking through the different phases of the business cycle and the issues that would restrict production, the economic conditions at this time do not support the pipeline construction. Therefore, our recommendation would be to not proceed with the construction of the pipeline at this time. Thank you.